Who here feels supported? All right, perfect. So now, I'm won't be waiting for the keynote speech. Now, what I love about Reverend Dr. Paul McPhail is that he's definitely a comedian. Fun fact, he tells everyone that he's 16 years old, but he's finding it harder to sell it these days. I personally think he's 17. So it's like your inner child really comes out. He lives by his inner child, and you're definitely amazing. Pastor, you can please come up and take the floor. Okay, give him a round of applause. Feel supported?
Just to help you, I'm 16.
16, okay, 16.
Good evening. It's a privilege to be with you this evening. You've had all kinds of information shared with you. So as the keynote address, I'm going to try and pull some of it together. Some of us pray this prayer: give us this day our daily bread. And I think that Fred is an answer to that prayer. We've heard a number of different systems. I've talked to people that are here from banking, finance. I've talked to people that are involved in real estate. I've talked to people that want to get into farming. And I believe that some of the answers are right here in this room. It is important that you be aware of that. When I talk about food insecurity in Canada, we need to be aware that it is rising. One year it rose 18% over the previous year. There are many reasons for food insecurity. We've heard about African Black and the food there, but we need to be aware of Indigenous. We need to be aware of the differences between North American Black, Caribbean Black, East Africa, West Africa, Central Africa. We need to be aware that within Chatham-Kent, we have what is called a food bank. You have it here in Ottawa as well. NeighborLink, we have 33 churches that are cooperating. We're feeding the hungry, but it's not meeting the need. We need to look at poverty. We need to look at food insecurity. We certainly talk about the rising cost of living. We talk about income instability. There are all kinds of system issues that I could identify as well. Indigenous people, I'll pick on them because I don't know that they're represented here, but they may be watching us. There are all kinds of system barriers, and each of you can identify some of the system barriers that you have encountered. I've had the privilege of talking to people in banking, and I pointed out some of the system barriers regarding real estate, buying your farm, 25 acres, 50 acres, 300 acres, whatever that may be, limited access, so creative financing. We have people here from a credit union, from a bank. Each of them have different profiles, portfolios that they will follow. It's important that you understand that when you start to talk to them about it. We need to talk about some of the inequity. I recognize that as a Caucasian, I'm speaking to individuals perhaps of color, and we need to be aware that there are inequities. And how can you overcome that? And I'm here to tell you that you can overcome them. We have been able to see that happen in my lifetime. My grandfather was a farmer, the handicraft era. So I'm 2 generations away from it here in Canada. Some of you are the first generation now saying, I'm bucking against the stream and I want to be able to address this as far as food being available to our people. We've also talked about the social network, the culture. I've had the opportunity of traveling across Canada, over 500 different congregations, some of them culturally based, and so they would place their food in front of me, and I had the opportunity of eating it. One of my favorite, Jib Cree up at Red Lake. The table was spread with all kinds of vegetables and meat, and Mrs. Beardy came and brought a berry pie and set it in front of me. I've been taught to eat my vegetables first, but I had a berry pie, and she was honoring me by doing that. Whatever our culture may be, we are able to strengthen our culture. We're able to teach that next generation that this was important to us. We all go home to get mom's cooking or grandma's cooking. Why not share that with the next generation? I was born in a house where I had one brother. So my mother insisted every other Saturday that I had to bake pies, cakes, butter tarts. You can do that with your family. Take them out and show them this is what is important to us as a family. You need to be aware that there are all kinds of charities that are involved. I've spent a lifetime in ministry, but I'm fully aware I lead NeighborLink in Chatham, 33 churches. We feed the hungry. We have wraparound for those that are having issues in their family. We do budgeting training. We help with food preparation. All of these things may be part of Fred, where you simply say, this is what is of value to you, and this is how you're able to share it with the next generation. I believe that we need to be promoting food security. I know where my next meal is coming from, but I don't have to travel very far to encounter people that don't know where their next meal is going to come from. You can help. You've heard the plan. You need to prioritize food security. Now, when I look at children, I love children. I love developmental psychology. But I look at children, and I'm fully aware that they need to experience good food. It accounts for their development intellectually, emotionally. We also need to be honest with each other and talk about some of the system issues. I can name parts of the city where real estate is not appreciating in value like other parts of the city. I can name certain groups that have difficulty in getting financing. So we may need to do some creative financing. I talked to someone from a credit union. I used the example of a church that applied for financing. 5 times they were rejected until a credit union stepped up and gave them the financing that they needed to build the new church. Someone talked about Colonel Sanders. Did you realize that he was a senior when he started to sell this recipe? Did you realize that he made 1,500 presentations, and each time he was told no? It was 1,006th time that finally someone bought his recipe, and we eat Colonel Sanders Kentucky Fried Chicken all over the world. You and I understand no, N-O. You have heard the recipe in Fred this evening so that you can overcome some of those no's and see success. It is important that you pass it on to the next generation. So when I talk to African Blacks, I've eaten some of your food, I've enjoyed it. Food is sovereign. We need to be aware of how important it is. Let's make sure that food is available. Now, when I look at Canada, the majority of our people live within 100 kilometers of the American border. I travel from coast to coast. But I can take you up into the Arctic as well. It is important that we be aware that as you take the recipes from Fred here this evening and start to apply it, that you apply this not only to one group. I had a goat herd. I sold goats to Jamaicans, but then I found out that the Portuguese also wanted goats. And I started to spread my market. So once again, being aware that perhaps there's something that is important to you that others may benefit from. Let's deal with food. Let's deal with justice. Let's combat food insecurity. Let's look at the multifaceted need that we have and reach out and expand it. I also believe in dealing with such things as minimal wage, welfare income, social programs, affordable housing, small farmers. I used the example of 25 acres, but I have people with 4 acres. 5 acres, growing the vegetables that they need for their household. I had a brown bag of green onions left on my front step before I left home yesterday. Once again, it came out of a small plot of ground. So small-scale farmers, gardeners, train them, market, and then, of course, be aware of some of your climate-smart crops. From our last presentation, we heard about that. You need to be aware that also greenhouse operations. I've had a greenhouse. I've had a farm with vegetables. I've had livestock. I understand all of that area. I've administered that. You may not look at me as a farmer, but that's what I've been able to do. The other part is to look at food waste. In southwestern Ontario, they go through and they reap the potatoes, the tomatoes, the carrots, and left behind are seconds. Left behind is enough to feed all kinds of people. You and I need to be aware when people are in those large operations, perhaps 3,000 acres, that there may be 20 or 30% of vegetables that are left behind that you may be able to use. So let's educate. Let's share the knowledge. Let's look at such things as a goat herd, chickens and eggs. In West Africa, we're expanding our egg production, and that provides income. When we look at innovative technology, there's all kinds of technology that's being developed, from the little old Ford tractor that we used to run back in the 50s to now the multi-million-dollar operations that we have. So precise planting, crop rotation, smart irrigation. I saw where one was talking about 90%. Well, if I go to Israel, all of their water use is over 90%. They constantly are reusing the water. So let's digitize our supply chain, AI, start to reduce the waste, be more efficient, start to analyze what crops are being grown here in Gatineau or Ottawa or down in southwestern Ontario. Or just before I came into the meeting this evening, I talked to a person out of Saskatchewan. What can that person from Africa do in Saskatchewan? So long-term food security, better health through training and mentoring. And then, of course, I believe that God will bless you as you meet these needs. Let me tell you a little story about an Indigenous fellow. He's prominent in his community. Took his mother to a restaurant in town, and he ordered buffalo wings. They brought the plate of buffalo wings to him, and he smelled it and looked at it and didn't like it, sent it back. The second plate came, and finally his mother, who is an Indigenous lady, said, "You realize that it's chicken." You can laugh at that one. It is chicken. You need to be aware of how people may look at things and feel it's something other than it really is. When I was 5 years of age, I was here in Ottawa at a Sunday school rally, and they asked me to tell a story. And the story that I told was of 5,000 people that were gathered in a wilderness, plus women and children, and how bread and fish was broken, blessed, and multiplied. And 5,000, perhaps 5,000 wives, 5,000 children, 15,000 in that wilderness were fed. Bread is trying to do that in Canada. We're trying to multiply. We're asking that God bless. I believe that his gift of substance in the wilderness is a sign that God reigns. I know that we have different faith groups here this evening, but we believe together that we can address the needs, social needs in Canada. Fred, I pray for God's blessing. I pray that you will take the nuggets and apply it. and as you pray for your daily bread, that your needs will be supplied. Thank you for listening to me.
Yeah, 16. Fabulous. That's great information from a 16-year-old. I like that.